So I'll come up with a topic. Um,
Okay, cool.
so speaking of public education,
Uh-huh.
it seems like we're pushing. You can tell me if I'm wrong, but it
hmm
seems like we're pushing STEM. Uh, like we might have a shortage of STEM in America of people majoring in STEM or graduating in STEM and stuff like that.
Okay.
So this is my question. Um, in other countries, people are doing calculus like in the fifth grade. How do
Okay.
we compete with that with our current public K through 12 system? Like we'll never catch up.
I actually agree with you. But a big factor in that is money is not allocated accordingly in public education. We should see more money. The problem is that we're not seeing enough help in the school. So we don't have enough teachers. We don't have enough teachers' assistants. I mean, if you look back even 20, 30 years ago, like elementary school, for example, typically had a TA, a teacher's assistant, in every classroom. So every teacher had basically another teacher, another helping hand in the classroom all day, every day. We have TAs now stretched between two grade levels. So we're not getting the resources, if you want to call it that we need. So that's a big, deterrent for kids. And because of that, we're also not seeing children that have more like leveled needs, like or to get on level where they should be for each grade level, because of the fact that we're stretching individuals like teachers so thin, they are not being able to focus. I mean, that's why we saw that big push for like No Child Left Behind, which I think is absolute bullshit. Obviously, I don't want to see children being retained, being older and older in a grade level, and that social issue coming up. But if we actually funded the right things and resources in the school, we wouldn't have that issue to begin with. We would have the ability to give them all of the resources and time and one-on-one that they need, not to mention class sizes. I mean, I don't know if you know this, but like, for instance, in Virginia, um, a kindergarten class can be upwards of 22 students before they create a new classroom. Fifth grade can be up to 25 students before they create a new classroom. And then now you're finding out you have one individual that's dealing with all of these personalities, all these diverse backgrounds, all these diverse education levels. That's very hard to get them on level or even above level if we're stretching people that thin over a short amount of time each day. Does that make sense?
You provided a very thorough answer.
Okay. I'm glad to hear that. I just think we need to allocate funds better. We see private schools really flourishing, and that's because they're not only getting private sector money, but they're also getting public sector money through vouchers and other systems. And they have class sizes of like 10 to 12, where public education, like I told you, is twice that, if not more. We're also seeing funds for private education for students. They're getting anywhere, I think the starting point is like uh, 25 to 30,000 and up, depending on what kind of private school you're in, per student per year. Public education sees 6 to 12,000 per student per year of actual funding.
Okay, so shifting gears a little bit,
hmm
you can go on YouTube right now, and you can go on Khan Academy, and there's one other one that's really good. I forget what it's called,
hmm
but from your house, from YouTube, you could basically learn calculus and learn math and stuff like that. What do
Absolutely.
you think? What do you think college is going to look like in the future? Will it be more brick and mortar, or will we have more people doing the distance?
Um, if we continue down this path, it's hard to tell. I'm sorry. If we don't start changing the way public education again is funded, and what the goals are set for each grade level, um, we're I don't really know. Like education right now, I feel like our college right now, the first couple years seems to be almost stepping stones for most kids because they're kind of going into that. I feel like more and more children don't even know what they want to do with their lives when they're exiting
Right.
high school because of the fact, like you said, they're getting very limited elective courses, which I think is really a shame. You also see a lot of high schools, particularly, and even lower grade levels that have these extracurriculars that really could drive some of their desires, or maybe open the door for some other careers down the line, that they don't have access to transportation to participate in, or we see an issue in that lacking too. I feel like I'm very thankful my district has a lot of opportunities, provides transportation for the most part, both athletically as well as education. Like my daughter's doing art and Model UN, and there's these things to kind of get them involved and outside of just the, like you said, brick and mortar of what public education is. Um, but I really don't know the answer. I don't feel like most people really focus on what they want to do with their lives until like the last 2 or 3 years of college. And then they're just targeting those courses that are for that purpose. But yeah, like when I left high school, I had already done pre-calc and trigonometry. I did not do calculus until college, my first year of college. And I was, 99 graduate, so a while back. I don't
Okay.
know. I don't think if we don't fix the problems, the root causes, I think we're going to continue down a path of being, more and more uneducated compared to other nations
Yes.
that
Yes.
prioritize public education.
S- So I have an even more interesting question for you further down the rabbit hole.
Hmm.
Um, a lot of folks have reported in surveys and studies and whatnot, um, that they only used like the major classes or the major portions of their education in college and didn't really get a lot out of the GEs. And they report something similar for high school. So for
Okay.
you, if you could put together a core curriculum of essential knowledge, like these are the useful things you need to know
Hmm.
to graduate from high school, what would that look like?
I mean, I'm moved towards the STEM programs as well, because I do think most jobs, even from the basic like working at McDonald's to, being an engineer and overseeing, machinery, ships, building things, that is so important. I also think that I really think that arts and liberals though is also exploratory for the mind in regards to testing your imagination. I feel like we don't really allow children to use their imaginations like we used to. Of course, history, 110%. We're doomed to repeat our past if we don't learn our history. And I think sometimes we need to be less sheltered and PC about the true history of both our nation and abroad. The reality is, like other nations, like speaking of other nations, they know more about U.S. history than most people that walk down the street in the United States, and
Right.
it's terribly sad. Um, so, I mean, I definitely think we need to focus on those core things. I also think that we need to be introducing, and most high schools require this, but I think it needs to go in more depth, teaching kids about budgeting and like
Yes.
financial planning, understanding what, even my daughter, when she went to college, was already like, hey, mom, like, can you give me a spreadsheet of what you think things are like? What would I be paying for my phone bill when I'm on my own? What would I be paying for car insurance? And, so that she can see in real life, like, this is what I need to be able to create. And then I need to also have beyond those funds so I can, do fun things, have savings. Like, we really aren't teaching our children that. And even families, my mom made a point of doing it with me. She got me a checking account when I was like 13, and we did the same thing with my eldest, who's now in college. Like, we kind of pushed this idea, like, you need to know how to take care of your money. And I don't see that a lot anymore. I see a lot of people budgeting their children. Again, I don't think it should be a simple one and done course. I think we should be having an actual curriculum around it for these kids. Um, I think that we need less focus on testing, personally.
Yes.
Like, standard of learning completely destroyed public education, in my opinion. It made the teachers pivot from focusing on where the kids are at and how they could benefit them on all aspects to, we're learning to take a test.
So
SOLs are bullshit. Absolutely. Like, I despise them and the amount of pressure they put on both the teachers and the students. You see far more what a kid is capable of in the classroom on daily classwork, how they engage versus a singular test that they're just studying to accomplish.
So what do
Um,
you, let me ask you this. There's a country, if someone in the comments could look it up, because I saw this the other day, but there's a country overseas. I think it's a Scandinavian country, and I don't know if it's Norway, Switzerland, or Denmark, but they
mhm.
supposedly have like the best quality public education system in the world.
I mean,
And
Denmark is one of the best. I don't know if it's the one you're thinking of. My husband lived there for a year and a half, almost 2 years, and his kids went to school there.
and yes, and so their minister of education was interviewed, and he was asked like, "What do you
Finland.
guys
Someone's
do?"
saying
Yeah,
Finland.
Finland.
Hmm.
What do you guys do differently? And he said, "We don't give homework." And so,
Hmm.
what are your thoughts on that?
I think homework is stupid. I mean, I like now I'm coming from a place too, like this is tough because now we have social media, which I think has kind of been the demise of people's both mental health and education. Because when I was a kid, if I wasn't in school, I was outside. I was, you know, I wasn't sitting in front of something. Now, given we have everything, access to everything at the hands of or like the tips of our fingertips, and I get that, and that's very incredible that we can like just search something up instantly and know the answer. But it's about retaining and living in the moment, and I don't think that happens anymore, and that's impacted the way people learn. Our brains are now wired to be like constantly mobile, because of the fact that we can scroll and look at things and our attention span is gone. Um, it's just been so like detrimental, I think, to mental health. And I think like homework is uh, has good and bad. So for homework, for
Oh, I'm not able to hear you. Uh, I can't hear.
is a nice tool to gauge. Oh, can you hear me now?
Yes, you're good now.
Golden, can you hear me now? Okay, sorry, I got a phone call. I had to turn my do not disturb on. I think for students that have really involved parents that are like really like they're the parents that have been reading to their kids since they were born. They're the parents that have always been like at all the PTA meet, like just really on brand of like being active in their kids' education. Homework's a nice tool to have something at home to work with them side by side and kind of gauge where they are. However, if you don't have that interaction or that support at home, homework is a huge burden, um, for the students. It really is because they don't have someone to look at and say, "I don't understand this." My middle daughter really struggles with certain elements of school, particularly like she loves math, but it's still really hard for her to grasp. And I'm beyond thankful that she had a counselor during middle school, especially during COVID, that saw where her struggles were. And we communicated constantly because I saw them too. I saw her get frustrated with things, and she ended up giving her basically a study block during her seventh and eighth grade year, and now she even has one in high school, that allowed her a full hour to sit with a teacher and say, "Hey, I don't get this." So it was her getting her classroom that maybe she didn't complete because I've noticed that they're not doing a whole lot of homework nowadays. I do feel like they've kind of tried to get more and more away from a massive amount of homework, unless you're in things like AP classes or honors classes. They tend to be a little more inundated with homework. But like regular, just standard courses, I'm not seeing that huge amount of homework being sent home. And that study hour, giving her like access to someone that understood the material was huge. um and that goes back to like having more people in the classroom that can help in those moments. I don't think we need more homework. I think we need more resources and literal bodies in the rooms that can help these children when they're struggling. Because even me, like it's been 20 years since I've been in school. Like there's things that I don't remember that I like my kid will bring to me and I'm like, I don't remember, like I don't know how to help you. And if we had that access in the classroom of people that do understand what they're learning, it would be massive, to just improve their ability to grasp the assignments and the things that they're learning about. And I also wanted to say to you that I think I'm frustrated with is, um, and I hope can I remember what I was going to say? It was about, oh shit, it'll come to me. Go ahead. I'm sorry. I like lost it.
So if you had the choice, okay,
Hmm.
let's say this was your ideal school, would you extend the in-school day and erase the homework, or keep the in-school day the same and have a little bit of homework?
Personally, I do neither. Um, I would provide again more bodies in the buildings or shrink the class sizes to give a more one-on-one experience for children that need it. I would also put into play. I think every school should have some type of tutoring program available that supports the students that know they need it, and then also supplies transportation. Um, yeah, no, I wouldn't extend the school day. I feel like honestly, the school day is already too long for a lot of kids, especially kids that struggle to just sit still. I mean, you're putting a lot of demands on someone to like even at a regular job, people aren't just sitting still unless they've truly chosen like a freaking desk job, which a lot of young people are getting away from that more and more and doing more active roles with jobs. So yeah, I definitely wouldn't extend the day, but I would shrink the classrooms and give more resources.
Definitely. Thank you for those answers. That's beautiful. So getting back to the curriculum,
Hmm.
you mentioned financial literacy, which I think would be very important, especially for kids who are going to inherit homes from their parents. But what about things like human sexuality or public speaking?
Okay. Well, public speaking, I think, is the required elective as well in high school. I think you only have to take one course on it, but I'm like, I know my ninth graders already has it on the book that and I remember having to take it as a required course. So I think that has and is and should be. I mean, I think that's a great skill. It takes people out of their comfort zone, which I think all of us need to do at that time. So yeah, I would definitely advocate for a public speaking thing. And I just remembered what I was going to say. Another thing that other countries have that we in the United States do not is the funding for each school is based on the community or even the city that you live in. So in other words, if you live in a more high end suburbs or a city that's got a little more funding because of just the population and the amount of people coming in and out of the city, you have a better quality of school that's getting more and more money. Where other nations, for instance, Denmark, for instance, the UK, Australia, every single student gets the exact same access to education, whether you live on this side of the country or this side of the country. We don't see that in the States. We are not
Oh,
seeing a
wow.
uniformed curriculum that is properly funded equally across the board. So if you live in a poor community, you have you have less resources, you have larger class sizes, and you're seeing less money going per student per year.
So here
So
in
that
the
was something I wanted
US,
to point out.
we have a very decentralized form of public K through 12
Correct.
that's
Correct.
local dependent, and because of that,
Hmm.
leads to drastically different results.
Correct. So you see more poverty-stricken communities that are kind of in what I consider pigeonholed into lower education, less opportunities because of that, less opportunities for college, less opportunities for high paying jobs. So it's kind of keeping these kids in these communities in these poverty situations. It's getting harder and harder for them to access a better life because they're literally being, harmed by the amount of money that they get from the local community to go into their schools.
Okay, I can see that I can see that completely. As far as higher education is concerned, um, why do you think that most US colleges implement there's like another core curriculum in higher education even after you get done
Mm-hmm.
with high school?
So the reason that it was explained to me when I went to college, which it did make sense. Um, like I said, school, particularly since the late '90s, has been geared towards testing, not towards learning. And because of that fact, for example, if you take an AP course in history in school, you're not learning like it's not about making history and the learning experience enjoyable or anything like that. It's about you learning to memorize the information you need to specifically take a test so that you can get a credit on your little piece of paper towards college. That's it. Where in college, these courses are being presented and taught, not just to take a test, but to engage you in the actual information, if that makes any sense. So when you take a history course in college, you are interacting with history. In fact, my daughter is a history major with a master's in education. That's her goal. And we went and met the liaison of the history department there for her orientation. And literally, she used that orientation time, that hour, to give us a sample reading that was a true reading from Slavic nations, like that area. Told us to read the story, and then had us dissect it in the room together, trying to decide if we thought it was true or not, and if we didn't think it was an accurate story, what brought us to that conclusion. She made you interact with the story. It's changing the way you learn, and sadly, public education needs to be that. If we removed the testing aspect of these like goals and what these schools are trying to get so they can get proper funding, because that's what it's all about. Like if you don't have the right ranking in your school division, you're not going to get XYZ dollars. If we removed that caveat, that stipulation, and allowed teachers to teach to get children to love it, we would see a vastly different like response um, from public, like lower education versus higher education. Higher education is teaching you so that you understand and enjoy and feel a connection to the curriculum, to the information. And I think they do that the
Yeah,
first 2 years, so you can really delve into like, is this what I want to do with my life?
yes, you are giving very good answers. That's why I'm kind of probing you a little bit.
Okay.
Um, I want to describe a situation that made school hard for me and some other kids.
Mm-hmm.
So in grade school and elementary school, I really loved it because we had a home room and we had a
Mm-hmm.
home teacher that taught all the subjects. I know that's not realistic going up. Um, and I got straight A's, but once I transitioned to middle school and I
You're
had to
moving.
walk from room to room for each subject, it made it my anxiety went through the roof. I was physically tired. Um, I my learning style wasn't compatible with all the different teachers.
Mm-hmm.
What type of balance would you find so that kids feel more comfortable like in our homeroom setting?
So I think that goes back to I think that goes back to the hiring issue and the resources. I work in elementary school, so I know exactly what you're talking about. You're with that one person all day. You kind of build a connection to that person, which I think is so important in those early years because you are in a mindset where like you're coming from home, where you're with your mom and your dad or whoever for the majority of the time, and you have a bond. And now you're going into a classroom for 7, 8 hours a day. You're forming a bond with that teacher. Um, but I think with middle and high school, those transitions, if we see those needs, you know, having counselors on hand to one, maybe make your transitions less, organizing your schedule so that you're not seeing these huge shifts throughout the day. I personally, I really loved, and I was really angry during COVID. They changed this. So in high school, and I think they should do it in middle school too, instead of having 8 classes a day or 8 classes split between 2 days. So I don't know if you had this, but we had like an A, B, and a day and a B day. So A day, you did 4 classes throughout the day that you moved throughout the building. B day, you had 4 different classes you moved throughout the building. Um, that's a lot. Not only are you getting 8 course loads of information and homework and just, I mean, really overwhelming, I think, for a student. Where pre COVID, and because dealing with like we weren't dealing with a teacher shortage issue. We had a four per half. So you had 4 classes for the first half of the school year that you took every day. So you were consistently like staying on those courses. You had so much. You had, even though you were there every day, you had ample time to like work on this.
Oh,
Sorry, I froze. Can you hear me?
yes, you're good.
Can you hear me? Okay. Okay. So when you did the four for 2 semesters, you're focusing, you're doing less mobile time because you're every day you're going to the same classes. You know where you're going to be at the beginning, second, third, fourth day. You're building a bond with those teachers a little better. It basically had the setup like college does, which I also think was huge. Like you're kind of preparing a student also to go to higher education, because in college you're taking maybe four, maybe five if you're a little bit of a overachiever, but 4 courses per half, and you're focusing on those 4 courses. They are your priority. I definitely think that middle and high school should do that across the board. I think that would be so beneficial because, again, it's limiting the amount of teachers and travel that you're doing each day. I hate the 8B blocks. I hate them. I just think that they are so overwhelming for kids.
Yes, I never liked doing 6 periods in a school day. I didn't like being at school for
Yeah,
eight
it's too
hours.
much. It's too much. Yeah.
So now I have an even more interesting question for you because you're giving good answers. Um, Out of classroom life at school, like the dog eat dog world of where am I going to sit during lunchtime when I don't know anyone? I have very high anxiety. What if
Mm-hmm.
kids make fun of me?
Yeah.
How would you mitigate something like that?
So now I think this is something that you have to do a kind of a building block early on, because your kids with anxiety early on in elementary stage. Your kids that feel a little more socially awkward. There's recognition there. So, for instance, in our elementary school, our guidance counselor does acknowledge that, and not just talking about like our SPED, our special education kids, but like in the general population. And she started creating basically like these little individualized lunches with 5 or 6 kids, that were these kids that struggled a little bit more with social anxiety, and brought them together, and they'd eat, they'd conversate, they'd play games. So I feel like it always comes back to just having more bodies in the building, but creating these little small groups, of people that are like-minded, and have similar, fears and anxiety, and then understanding moving forward that you can do that. Like my oldest daughter, she's an old soul. She doesn't like big groups and crowds. She never ate lunch in the lunchroom. She ate lunch in the teacher's room, usually with either just herself or maybe one or two other, classmates, because that was comfortable for her. So I think it's providing environments, based on the student that bring them comfort and make, their experience better. But again, if you have really good individuals in the school that are communicating as they elevate each grade level. Like this guidance counselor, like, hey, I've had this group of 4 or 5 kids that have been having lunch together every day. It's been really working for them. They've really built their communication skills. They're feeling less awkward about, engaging with other students. Can we maybe try to, create a small group for them when they get into middle school? And eventually, if you're doing this at a young age, you're going to see the social anxiety lessen, and seeing them be able to build relationships far better when they get up into the higher grade levels. I think it's really building foundational blocks when they're young, but again, you need people in the schools to see where those blocks need to be built.
Yes, Lexington in the comments mentioned structured circles, which I'm a big fan of,
Hmm. Yeah.
and I've even seen a few schools do assigned seating at lunchtime. Um,
Uh,
and
I have
I
mixed feelings
almost
about that. I have mixed feelings about that. I don't feel like assigned seats. I get the idea of like kind of forcing children to be communicative, um, but I also think it eliminates their, ability to kind of be free too. Um, my girlfriend has a son that's kind of more introverted, and he is socially awkward, but he does have a couple friends that he knows outside of school, that he's able to feel like comfortable around. And the first 2 weeks of middle school, they forced him to be with their homeroom class only at lunch, and he hated it, because he didn't know the people, and they weren't kind of people on his level, which I think goes back to like if you build those foundational blocks early on and you have people kind of helping you through the different ranks of school, um, you kind of can do these smaller groups, some people just don't do well in big groups. Some people don't do well sitting in a lunchroom that's like loud and echoey and distracting. I mean, it could be very overstimulating. Um, some people need to know that if they want to, they could go with maybe one or two friends or even a teacher and or a TA or somebody they trust and have like a really small group and have like a classroom or another space that they can eat. Like I just feel like it's learning about these kids individually and not lumping them into like these like blanketed, like they're all just the same. They're not. Kids aren't the same, unfortunately. They're just not.
So, what is the difference between assigned seating and a structured circle?
I mean, I think, well, I don't really know the definition. I've never heard structured circle in my school. But I'm going to make an assumption that maybe a structured circle is actually taking kids that maybe have maybe a little more compatible and creating a group versus just forcing them in a group of kids that they just happen to be assigned in a classroom with. But I don't know. I've never heard that.
Excellent. You have been absolutely fantastic. I'm going to exit so someone else can be inquisitive.
Okay. All right. Well, you have a good day.